and welcome. And let's invite Jody McDonald up here for the pledge and the four-way salute.
All right, please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do, first, is it the truth? Second, is it fair to all concerned? Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned?
And let's see, words of inspiration. Henry.
Okay, I have a little poem for you from an unknown author called May You Always. May you always have enough happiness to keep you sweet, enough trials to keep you strong, enough sorrow to keep you human, enough hope to keep you happy, enough failure to keep you humble, enough success to keep you eager, enough friends to give you comfort, enough wealth to meet your needs, enough enthusiasm to look forward, and enough determination to make each day better than yesterday.
All right.
Thank you. I'd like to announce we got a few guests here today, fellow Rotarians. Tim Quinlan, way in the back. Hey Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
And I know Ann Bauer is around here somewhere. There's Ann. And Tracy Leaneck, is that correct? All right, got it. Close enough. I think you're all from the Wednesday thing. So welcome, I'm glad to see you. Any other visitors? Any other guests today? Okay, I don't think so. All right, just we're gonna go to announcements, just a few things. Please remember to pay your either lunch or just the attendance fee. In other words, we owe a couple of us now and then forget to pay the food pub. So please do not forget to either pay for a drink, pay just to be here, or pay for your lunch. So I think we're caught up, but I hope you are. Don't forget, membership dues are due by the end of the year. We're encouraging people to pay them beforehand. Sometimes people wait till next year, and you know, it's just difficult for us to determine who actually is still a member, and we have to cover the costs, things like that. So please help Laurel out. She's our treasurer. Get your dues in as quickly as you can. Let's see. She may not appreciate this, but it is Judy Basker's birthday today. I can let her go. Happy birthday. All right, announcements.
Well, since we're only about a week and a half or so away, I'm going to give an update on the backpack program. I will also send out an email. But I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown again as to what all is going into the backpacks. So we've got the backpack, we've got knit gloves, we've got socks. We actually have two pair, one that we purchased and one that was donated to us. Stuffed animal, a book, including ESL for those that need it. Ramen noodles ×2, macaroni and cheese ×2, peanut butter, graham crackers, a knit cap that's being donated. Cats, hygiene kits being donated, toothbrush donated, toothpaste donated, tuna ×2 donated by Grocery Outlet, mandarin oranges ×2 donated by Grocery Outlet, tissues donated, coloring books and crayons donated, and Vespro's cards donated. So a huge backpack. You know what our cost is? Throw out some ideas as to of the items we purchased for 240 backpacks, how much each backpack actually costs the club and the donations of cash you guys gave us.
$7.
How much?
$7.
$7?
A lot of donations.
35. What was the other? 50. You weren't as far off as you would believe. $17.04 per 240 bags. We can only do that based off of, you know, some of the discounted funds and stuff that we're getting, but all the donations that you guys have provided and that other organizations have done as well. So thank you very much. I just kind of wanted to make sure people knew how that was going, because those of us that have been there have seen how fabulous those backpacks are. So looking forward to it. I know we've got lots of you coming on the 12th, and looking forward to our backpack stuffing event that night as well. Thank you also, everybody stepped up, and I've got all of the schools covered. So if you are able to be a backup in case, you know, when stuff happens, somebody gets ill or something happens, if you were able to do a backup to be able to take backpacks to a school, please let me know and I'll put you on a list. So it might be a last minute situation on that. Now, switching hats, now I'm Santa. Ornament exchange. We've got an ornament exchange with the Right Left game coming up on December 14th. So make sure that you're getting your ornaments, whether it be at the glass forge for the ornament blowing or some other way. We would love to have that. Love the participation on that. It's such a fun game. I think we've only lost one ornament by being dropped and broken, you know, so we've done very good over the years. So yeah, that's all. Thank you guys.
Well, hi there, I want to thank everyone who contributed to the Mint Program's Thanksgiving dinner whenever it was. Anyway, in particular, I want to thank Kel for letting everybody drop food off at her house. Leonora let us all drop off clothing at her house, warm clothing. Keep that stuff coming, we can still use it. But we don't know yet if we're doing a Christmas dinner or not, but you guys were absolutely fabulous. Lisa and Kevin Higgins, Kelly Moody, Margaret Bradford and Greg Ishwig, Don Welch, Jim Huber, Jed and Patty Hansen, Greg and Mary Millard, Tommy Drake, Jody Basker, Malcolm's involved in that. And Leonora Rogers and Michelle Kite. So thank you, thank you. It really helps these folks that are living out unhoused. I don't know how they do it. It's friggin' cold. Yeah.
Okay, as of last week, no new wild polio virus in the world. 9 cases still, 6 in Afghanistan, 3 in Pakistan. So we're getting closer and closer to eradicating polio. That being said, it all comes out of the foundation, and I have something here. Tina Marie. At the foundation dinner, first of the month, we were recognized for the club of Road Gateway Grants Passes for the certificate of appreciation for the financial support of the Rotary Foundation. Tina Marie gets the certificate that happened under watch, but it couldn't have happened without all of you. Thank you. Judy Bastard. Well, it's your day, isn't it?
I do.
Well, it's my pleasure to present you with your Paul Paris +6, which is now signified by a red stone. We used to call them rubies, but foundation is going to give you a real ruby. Yeah. So let me tell you about this. Your support of foundation. Members around the world, you're united, a divided nation around a water project in Lebanon, giving a gift of reading to students in Guatemala, recognizing a woman's worth and needs in Nigeria, and raising awareness about the environment in the United States, and fighting for a community cures to malaria in San Diego. Thank you for supporting the Rotary Foundation.
Wow. Today, tomorrow, and Saturday, the last 3 days of the 20% match for returnable bottles and cans in our blue bags. So if you have a blue bag that's half full or more, try to bring it in the next couple of days. We'll get 20% bonus for that. And anybody who needs an extra can, I have one for you. Well,
I took my blue bag in 2 days ago and it didn't work on the thingy bopper, so I took it inside. I just wanted everybody to know that wait for somebody.
Yeah.
Don't knock it.
What Tommy's saying is the scanner sometimes doesn't work very well. So different people that use the door have different bobs and different scannable kinds of things, other than the sticker that we put on our bags. And if you have to wait, you can wait and don't worry about, I think there's still a sign up there that says you should close the door and not let anybody use it when you put the bag in. But they'll scan the code again when it's inside, and that's when you get credit for the actual bottles and cans that you're concerned. The first scan does open the door and it works, but it doesn't really matter except that it puts a timestamp on it in case that becomes important, but it hasn't yet. The money goes to our foundation, the other foundation, and that's the money that's part of the money that we put towards the Porch Fest.
The visitor. A lot of you have already volunteered to help out with the interview weekend next week, and we keep hearing, am I on the list? Am I on the list? We haven't sent out emails yet, so. I wanted to let you know who I have on the list, and we'll get an email, but those who volunteered to interview for the Youth Exchange interview weekend that I have on my list are Doug Walker, Luke Craner, Brenda Patton, Lenora Rogers, Tommy Drake, and Greg Fishwick. And I have Dawn Welch, and it says everything, but I think she needs anything. So, we're still looking for a couple of homes to house the, inbound. There'll be 22 of them here. I have a handout that shows kind of what the schedule is. Basically, you are, finding a place for them to throw down a sleeping bag, you're feeding them, sometimes dinner, breakfast, dropping them off for the day, picking them up again. They're going to have their Christmas party on Saturday at Boys and Girls Club. So it's a pretty easy place to drop them off and pick them up. They can be dropped off as early as 5:30, between 5:30 and 6, and they can be picked up between 9:30 and 10. So if you have other things that you were going to do, you can still get rid of the kids and do what you're doing and go back and get the kids. So delivering them at about 10:30 on Sunday morning to Tap Rock. So if you're interested at all, and I don't have you on the list, right now, I don't have anybody listed specifically for hosting kids. So is there anybody that would at least like to see the flyer and then let me know? Everyone. Okay, you have to remember you're coming to concert at my house. We're gonna drop them off early. Okay, I won't take any more of your time, and I will get an email out today to let those know what time to come for the interviews. It's basically be there by about 8:30. And you're generally through about 2 or 2:30. We have 25 kids from around the district that we're interviewing. And we have 3 kids from Grants Pass that we're interviewing. So we're hoping to get to go. And we're kind of hoping that your club gets back into Youth Exchange. Yes. If you got questions about that, you can ask me because I've been doing it too long.
Just a quick reminder about Operation Joy Christmas cards. We have 2 more weeks, so keep filling them out and dropping them off at my house. I brought some blank ones in case anybody wanted them, but lovely Susan Bonson is gonna fill them all out for us. So I have no more to give you, so just keep bringing them blank if you have them or bringing them filled out, either way. Thanks.
As usual, a lot is going on in this club and elsewhere. And I've got some stickers or bumper stickers if anybody would like one. I'll put them on the back. It's just, it's a Rotary sticker. It says proudly a member of Rotary. So I found a big stack of them and I'll be happy to share them with you. Okay, Judy, would you like to introduce our speaker, please?
You do talk to me all the time.
Sorry, I'm cold, so I'm keeping my coat on. We are super excited today to have Josh Balloch, who's one of our club members here. Quick bio, his formal title is Vice President of Health Policy and Communications. He represents All Care's health interests to federal, legislative, and local government. He leveraged his prior state senate and state treasurer staff experience to take a leadership role in Oregon's historic 2011 creation of coordinated care organizations. He joined All Care in 2015 and has helped guide passage of multiple laws that protect communities' access to health care, expand social determinants of health, and control consumer costs. I have a quick bio for him, but he didn't list that he was born and raised in Oregon, right? That's important to us. And today he is going to talk about the 2024 session, which is only 6 weeks long. And our state legislators will be attempting to tackle massive issues facing the state, including housing, homelessness, and drug policy. Josh will present what pieces of legislation could be focal for 2024 and some insider perspectives. Welcome, Josh.
Okay, I like PowerPoints, so we'll get something up and running here. But yes, I am an Oregonian. I was born in Astoria. I moved to Newport when I was 2 and graduated high school from Newport High School and pretty much lived in Oregon my entire life. So with that, we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming 2024 session. So next slide here. Want to kind of explain what a short session and a long session are. So in odd number of years, those traditionally had always been the longer sessions, and that's when really the legislative only work. In 2014, they actually created annual sessions, and the idea is that they would go and with constitutionally mandated lengths, because it used to be on the odd years, the old ways, they could go into August, September. They could just go forever. So they created dates that said, nope, we're going to end after 6 months. And then a short session that will go 6 weeks. And the idea was that they would kind of mostly focus on fixing the budget, maybe kind of like policy bills that weren't quite working. You make some tweaks and kind of make it over. Next slide. Sadly, though, in reality, it's just become a long session condensed down into a 6-week scramble. So it's a lot of always new ideas. There's tons of money that they tend to reallocate. It can get out of control. So next slide. So the question is like, what are going to be the big topics that are really going to drive this session? So next slide. The big one's probably going to end up being housing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. The next one, in Measure 110, and I'll go into some details around that, and then finally the budget. Next slide. Sorry. And you can't really see this beaver coin, but I did want to like highlight this. So that is actually a 1849 Oregon minted coin. So Oregon was one of the few states in the west of Mississippi that actually minted a coin, and they did it super illegally. But the reason why it was really interesting was that they had to go in and they found gold in the Yukon and down in California, and Oregon's white landowning men all left. And so as a result, they were afraid they wanted to be able to become a state. And so they started minting these lead coins and putting gold leaf on the outside to trick people into thinking Oregon had found gold. And so they only did it for about 6 months until the federal government's like, you can't mint your own coin. But I actually just was doing some research on this, and somehow they convinced the federal government to buy their coinage back from them at our value. So I was like, hey, somebody made out like a bandit here. So there you go. Use this information today. So next slide. So in this last session, on the last day, Governor Kotek had one of her signature pieces of legislation die on the Senate floor, literally with an hour left to go. And it was just a hot mess. I was talking to the Senate Majority Leader. The bill failed on the floor. They then flipped a couple other votes. They were going to motion for reconsideration. She had to go running into the middle of the parking lot because one of the state senators who were supporting it were so pissed they got up and left. And they're like, no, you can't leave. You got to come back. And then nobody would motion to redo it, so the bill died. So next. So, but Kotek's planning on bringing that bill back in 2024. Next slide. Along with potentially 90 other recommendations from Housing Building Council. These are things, and if I was going to put them in 2 big buckets, it basically is changing a lot of the code zoning that is in cities and counties and the state government, and then changes in workforce development. I think the idea is to try to figure out ways to be able to get more state dollars into places where you don't have unionized groups. These have huge implications, and for a Democrat to go in and basically, next slide. And then also she's asking for $600 million extra to be able to, and most of that would go into building housing capacity. So this is not almost shelters or things. This is, we want to fund houses being built. Next slide. But the problem is that she's dealing with one, labor unions who are saying, no, we want this to be unionized work. And then two, a lot of land use efforts that have been put into place since the 70s. And so these are on a collision course. And so it's going to be a really interesting thing to see how the legislature navigates this, where you've got Tina, who's going to have to create a weird group of allegiances where it's not Democrats versus Republicans, rather it is urban Republicans, or Republicans who represent more urban areas, teaming up with suburban Democrats against central Portland Democrats who are really pro land use and farmer Republicans. So it's a very different dynamic. Yeah. And so it'll be interesting to see what passes and what doesn't. But to Governor Kotek's credit, you know, she is not backing down, and I think she has been incredibly clear in her positioning. I mean, heck, she's putting her money where her mouth is, like saying, "Look, I'm going to dump $600 million." I don't know where she's going to get $600 million, but she said she wants to do it. So. And any questions on that one before I move on? I do want to make this semi-interactive, and yes, Doug.
Are those 9 recommendations from the housing veterans, are those public?
They have been rolling them out slowly, so I can send you a link. They actually they're kind of working through them. I was talking to the chair of that the other day, just in a completely separate thing, and he brought it up. They are coming forward with 90 recommendations, but if you read the minutes and some of the other things, you can very clearly see what they're talking about changing. So yeah.
I was also wondering, what does that mean, 600 million towards building homes? I mean, assuming the state's not going to go into the business of being a general contractor and developing subdivisions.
Yeah.
But
so the question is, so if I say $600 million, the majority of it going into building homes, what am I saying here? So there, inside of the government, there's a group called the Oregon Housing and Community Development Commission, or whatever it is, or agency, or whatever it is. They tend to focus more on transitional housing, homeless shelters, things along those lines. They got funded pretty heavily. But then there's a whole group of like subsidies around building out housing, right? It's either waiving STC charges or buying property and gifting it to different people or something along those lines. That's where that money is planning on going. It's more into that second bucket, not necessarily the first, where that first one really got the first big tranche of money that came in 2023. Does the second bucket count apartments and duplexes? Absolutely. In fact, I think if anything, you're probably going to see them trying to push that money more that direction, because those are the harder ones for developers to take the chance on. So they want to try to limit the risk for those developers to build more. I think that would be a fair place to check. Yes, in fact. Is the goal an attempt to reduce the UGB and make it easier to develop? Yes, that is exactly the bill that failed on the last day. So effectively, and I'm going to butcher this, so don't quote me on this, but effectively what it was that you got your UGB, you've got things that you're saying, I'm going to expand UGB into this other area, and but it has to go through like a LUBA process and a bunch of other stuff. What that bill said was, if a city wants to expand into that, they don't have to go through that process. They can just expand their pre-UGB immediately if they are building houses. So, and it has to be a specific kind of house. It can't be like, 5-acre estates. It's got to be condensed houses and those types of things. So that was the idea. And it was completely optional to the city. But a lot of land use groups said, whoa, that we have a problem with that, because now all of a sudden it's gonna expedite sprawl, creates a precedent for more sprawl to be able to go in. So it is a fight that Oregon has fought for many generations and will continue. But I think that's what we're really seeing. But Kotek really is falling on the side of let's be less stringent on this. So let's move on to something less controversial, drug policy. Measure 110 is going to be a real hot topic. The question is, are we going to be able to actually cut a deal? And I think, you know, the important thing, if folks don't know what Measure 110 is, effectively this was us legalizing certain quantities of drugs, hard or otherwise, with the idea that there would be treatment attached to it. I think, you know, the next slide. You know, I think what you've got right now is there is this, you can't really see this, but I think what it is you've got the people who are supporters kind of saying, hey, your brain, this is the good thing, the good way that you can do it. We can actually get treatment, we can really reduce these issues. But I think what people are seeing, which you can't really see behind here, is the drug use happening in the street, and people are pissed. And I think as a result, we're seeing polling data that shows originally when it passed 56 to 46 or 44, if I remember correctly. Right now it's upside down. It's now failing. People would actually support a repeal. So the question just becomes, can these two sides cut a deal? And it would be over these three big things. Next slide. So banning outdoor use or in public use, which currently is not illegal, stronger penalties for dealers, and then required treatment or incarceration. So those are kind of your big three. There's a boatload of other things that could be included. Some of this might happen, none of this might happen. Next slide. But what is driving this discussion to happen this session is that there is a very serious discussion about putting a repeal of Measure 110 or a repeal and replace of Measure 110. And so as a result, you've got people now maybe more focused on trying to compromise than you would have seen maybe even during the 2023 session. And there's some big heavy hitters behind that, including former gubernatorial candidate Betsy Johnson coming in saying, hey, I'm going to fundraise to make sure we start to address this. So it will be a very interesting and discussion. As I'll put on my all care health hat for a moment. Personally, or professionally, we aren't getting into the incarcerate and not incarcerate or the law enforcement, but we are really kind of engaging around the medical side of things and trying to figure out how can we expand out access for folks who want to get clean and sober or transition into much more of a penalty issue. The problem is a lot of the money that originally got spent was in harm reduction. And so harm reduction effectively is, we're going to make it safe for you to do drugs. But that was done at the expense of really expanding out clinical services to be able to reduce care. So I think that's going to be the place where hopefully we create more of a balance. Yes.
Is there a boat money sitting there because nothing got, like you said, a harm reduction, but all these places that were supposed to be opened up for recovery and all that, is there money actually out there for that sitting somewhere?
Is there a boatload of money out there being that can use for spending for more treatments? Short answer is in the coffers, no. That money did get sent out through what's known as burns, which I don't even remember what they stand for, but effectively counties kind of made decisions on where they're going to do it, and the state kind of said, look, focus on harm reduction, but that's where we really want to go. Now, some of our support centers, so like options, did get some dollars. There were some other things, but for the most part, it ended up in harm reduction. There is a boatload of money though behind it. If Measure 110 stays in place, a lot of that marijuana dollars does get funneled into it, and it could be double what it was in 2023 by 2027. And so now you're talking real money. And so that's the place where I think everybody's lining this fight up. So. Yes.
So I may be asking a naive question, but it seems to me that it's sort of the incarceration problem. Either way isn't good because they don't have the jail cells for either way. This is working. How does that work?
Great question. So the question is if you do increase incarceration or something along those lines, how do you have enough jail or police or other sundry things? It is a question that is actively coming up inside these Measure 110 conversations. There is no easy solution. I think what you're seeing from some of the law enforcement folks are that they believe that the threat of incarceration is enough to force folks back into treatment. And so that's effectively where they're at. Yep.
So sort of a overarching sort of theme is we have voter initiated measures like Measure 110, marijuana legalization many years ago. And they may feel like a good idea at the time. They think I voted for both, and then maybe I'm not having it myself voting for 110. But it feels like the processes that are supposed to follow just can't keep up. You can't follow and the legislation that needs to be there, the process, the rules, and all of the rollout. Measure 110 is a really fine example. Is that how do you see that whole process? We're going to do it again someday. We'll do something else. The voters are going to approve something, and then there's going to be all this shit that's supposed to follow that doesn't follow. That makes a mess of us.
So Doug's question effectively is like we passed these big overarching themes and policy changes, but they haven't been thought through, or they aren't fully vetted, and then they say, okay, go make rules, but there's no real guidance. And how do we do better? If those types of things? I think you're dealing with so first and foremost, you're dealing with a legacy of measure, whatever, the death with dignity law. And so the legislature killed a bill that would have allowed the death with dignity law. Folks who wanted it put it on the ballot. It ended up passing just barely. The legislature then went in and started tinkering with it, and then it tried to repeal it, and then put it on the ballot for repeal. And it ended up that repeal failed like 60-40. And then a bunch of people who tried to like repeal it got voted out of office. And so as a result, the legislature learned this lesson of don't touch these things. Like if you do, you get your butt voted out of office. Now, the marijuana law was kind of the legalization was the first time they truly did start tinkering with it. This one, but they're still living out of that old world of like, we can't mess with something the public have approved. The problem is what the public approves is not run through a lawyer. It's not even spell checked. The word governor is misspelled in 3 places in the Constitution. Because it was written by people who just said this is what we're putting on the ballot. They misspelled governor. Like that's how it works. So that's part of the issue. So you're dealing with the legacy of an old ballot measure and the lessons that legislature learned and that kind of pushed forward. The other piece is we just don't have expertise inside of the government to really handle a lot of these very highly technical things, especially after rules that aren't fully thought through are put onto the ballot. So we don't have experts that can think outside the box, and the box is so small that we don't have enough room to be able to fix it.
I just add, I thank you. I feel empowered to write legislation. Or math.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next one just so everybody can go home. So next, kind of the budget. So interestingly, our budget has been over the last since 2020 one of the healthiest budgets we've ever seen. Next, this last February, we literally found we got an extra $300 million than what we thought we were going to get the time before. The time before that, we had a $300 million increase. The time before that, we had a $200 million increase. The time before that, we had a $500 million increase from what they had projected. You're like, so next, why? So next, this is why. So next. So this is an income tax bracket for the state of Oregon. So, and this is 19, doesn't really matter. But what's really interesting is you can see people who are making $125,000, so anything above $125,000 you pay the highest rate. As wages in Oregon have been increasing exponentially, more and more people are going into that higher bracket and paying more. And so this is a place where the problem with only having an income tax is when everybody gets laid off, our income tax dries up. Well, the opposite's happening right now. Incomes are going up, so as a result, the legislature's is getting a ton more money. Next slide. And that's creating other problems and other priorities. So now you got a boatload of new dollars. You got Tina Kotek coming in saying, hey, I want to spend $600 million. And I think what she's kind of betting on is that the May forecast is gonna be up another 300, and that's how she's gonna pay for the $600 million ask. But then you also have the teacher strike that happened up in Portland, where, you know, the teachers really fighting over a lot of different things, and now they're coming in saying, look, we don't have enough competitive wages to keep our teachers aboard, we need more money. So while it's healthy, trust me, there's a lot of people out there trying to buy access to it. So expect these fights. It's a different problem than making cuts. It's where you spend money. And in my experience of working in the legislature, it becomes more contentious and more onerous in a surplus year, because people will spend that money 5 times over than in a cut. Because we can kind of agree on what the cut will look like. You can't really agree on what your priorities are. So any questions about that? All right, next. Oh, sorry.
So. In the budget for decades, and so we have these 2 lessons, and we know that we've got, a real problem with PERS and other debts. Have we had some kind of conference to the budget saying, if we have extra, put it in the place to pay our debt?
Rainy day funds. So there's actually one really good thing that I would say that happened over the teens in Oregon. That has been one of the big things. We never had a rainy day fund. So at the beginning, I think it was 2008, we created 50% of the corporate kicker would go into, if there's any kicker, would go into a education stability fund. And so that thing is almost actually maxed out. I think it's sitting at almost $1 billion. So we filled up that bucket. The legislature has done actually a very good job of building more and more retained earnings. So they've got more of a cushion inside of there that they've had. And they also have just a general fund reserve that they have started to build up. It's about 50% full. And I think if we keep doing these types of things, it'll probably get 100% full by probably by the end of this decade. So it's actually, we kind of learned from that lesson. Now, the thing is, one big recession and one type thing, dry it up like that, and then we'll have to start the process all over again. But at the very least, unlike everything else we've done, we at least have enough money to maybe get through a couple of years.
Good news, thank you.
Yeah. So I just, the only constant in legislature's change, I just kind of wanted to highlight a few folks. So our local state representative announced that she's actually taking a job working for the city of Gold Hill. I cannot thank Lily enough about that. She did an amazing job and really became a stateswoman up there in a lot of different ways. It is a loss. So, but really happy for her that she's got that new gig. We have, it looks like Christine Goodwin, who kind of represents part of Grants Pass and kind of the northern half of Josephine County. She looks like she's going to move from the House up into the Senate. If Art Robinson, actually, even if Art does run, I think she's going to run for that spot. Then we also have Elizabeth Steiner Hayward, who's the co-chair of Ways and Means, arguably one of the most powerful people in the legislature, because if you control the budget, you control everything. She's actually planning on running for treasurer, so that will open that spot up. And then Speaker Dan Rayfield, who just took over, announced he's going to run for attorney general. There are 2 people that are vying to move up inside of that space. So you have a lot, including one person who is the other co-chair of Ways and Means, which means that Tana, this person over here represents Sanchez, if she ends up getting it, we could have a new speaker and 2 new co-chairs running our budgets, which in 2025, which could create all sorts of mayhem and chaos. And then on top of that, it's not just Republicans or Democrats switching over next. Vicky Breeze Iverson, who is the Republican House Majority Leader, she got ran out next and was voted out of office and then replaced with a new person named Jeff Helfrich. So it's a lot of moving pieces. I always call it kind of political algebra. You got to kind of try to figure out who's moving what, where, and why people want to vote for whoever. And it's like I spend like 60% of my free time just thinking this stuff through because I'm a weirdo. So, any questions on that before we move on? And actually, we're going to hit next. Any questions? Is it okay? 20 minutes? Okay. Yes.
I believe we approved this measure that forbade
what, if legislators had 10 unexcused absences, they couldn't run for reelection, and that has been challenged in court. Any sense of how that's going, or when we'll get an answer on that one?
So this is measure 113, which is said that if you have 10 unexcused absences, you are no longer allowed to run. You cannot run for reelection in your when the next filing time comes up. So it's an important caveat, because the way that the Republicans are reading this is it says the next time, which means you file for reelection while you're currently serving. And so that's what they're challenging in courts. They're basically saying the way the law, again, this is back to when you let laymen write these laws, it opens up these loopholes, and so that's effectively what it is. Now, was the intent show up and do your job and you're out of there? Absolutely. Is that what was in the law? No. And the question becomes, for me, in the way that I've kind of looked at it, there's a dangerous precedent that I see it happening if the Supreme Court rules against the Republicans here, because now all of a sudden the Supreme Court can decide what the voters' intent was and then force their interpretation as state law. And that opens a dangerous Pandora's box. And if you're a Democrat, you might be saying, that doesn't make any sense, whatever. But wait until the Republicans are in charge, and then all of a sudden they're going to start using it. So that's why processes and things are really important, why precedent's so important, and why I get concerned when I see that. But where is it going to fall? If you maybe bet my house, I'd probably say the Supreme Court says, no, you guys, that was not the intent. You're out of here. So I don't know, we'll see. I'm wrong all the time. So yes.
There's been a bit of legislation passed in recent history that has made it pretty unattractive to be a landlord in the state of Oregon. Is there any talk of addressing some of that legislation during this session?
So the question really is around some of the landlord or renter in protections that have been put in place that made it even more difficult for landlords, or particularly smaller landlords, to get involved and be in the community. And will that particularly be rolled back? Are there some discussions? Rolled back, no, but I think momentum around giving more has stopped, if that makes any sense. I think once we got out of COVID, there's been some healthy pushback of wanting expansion, because effectively there are advocates out there who are saying you can never get rid of anybody in a home. Like, that's where they want it to be. I don't see any momentum for that anymore. I think, you might see it edge back a little, but a big repeal with, strong Democratic majorities,
I know a lot of people who have own rental properties where they investing.
Oh, it's.
Oregon,
Yep, yeah, and that divestiture issue is a real big issue, and I think what you're really seeing, and to the credit of actually Representative Pam Marsh, who's a Democrat out of the Ashland area, she really saw that, right? So Ashland has a lot of smaller, community owned, like, onesie twosie type of rentals. Those were the people that were leaving. She was watching her rental pool just shrink inside of Ashland, and so she was trying to push back, or at the very least get more flexibility for smaller landlords. I don't think that got a ton of traction, but we'll see. Maybe that's part of some of those recommendations as we're kind of getting the housing stuff. But I think right now that might be a 2025 discussion, not a 2024 discussion. Any other questions, concerns, comments? Rotten tomatoes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
I think Winston Churchill once said something to the effect that democracy is the worst form of government there is, but it's the best that we have. And I think maybe that was a good example of why he said that. Okay, Judy, Sergeant Tess at arms.
I didn't intend to monopolize anything today, but it's just kind of working out that way. So for sergeants, the topic today is just going to be gratitude, and I hope people will share. I am grateful who has been born 168 years ago. Actually, it was 68 years ago in the Josephine County Hospital. And it's super fun for me to have Ann Bauer here, who some of you know was my childhood babysitter. And she's in the Wednesday club. She was only 5 when she was watching. For all of us. But I'm grateful for all kinds of things, for old friends, for new friends, for Rotary. And Josh, I want to thank you. I think I speak for others. Your passion, your ability to synthesize or summarize things really helps me. I just find you fascinating, and I hope you'll come back and talk to us again. I think we're really lucky to have somebody of his caliber in our club. So thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna give my happy plugs for that, and then we're gonna pass the microphone around, and the first one up is Deb for happy plugs.
Thanks, Josh. One of my gratitude bucks is for Josh and the team at All Care, and I celebrated my 10th anniversary with All Care beginning of November, and so it was a great second act, if you will, and I feel very grateful and fortunate to be able to work with that team. I also wanted to express gratitude to Margaret Bradford and some of my other fellow members of the social committee. One of my announcements I was going to make earlier is that there's going to be a survey coming out to everybody about socials. We want socials, but that probably isn't quite the right word. But anyway, our social committee and the things that we're doing, our gatherings, how do we think forward? Give us some feedback, give us some insight, give us your advice, what you would like you to coach us forward. And so watch for a survey coming soon. And gratitude for great Thanksgiving, great holiday, lots of laughter with the kids and family and time together. So thank you.
What's up next? Wow, that's good.
All right, I'm giving you $10 so that we can sing happy birthday to Judy.
I give my hand box too. I mean, I can't thank this group. I mean, really, I kind of feel a little shaky because it's been one of those crazy years where I had one meeting place, I'm getting that one, so I can't get it as I want to, but I mean, this is a great group. I do look forward to coming and seeing you all. So thank you. Josh, like I said, I think it's so important to keep that fingers up in Salem because so much, I think my frustration is to realize how much happens in Salem that affects every single one of us. So we really need to keep abreast of what's going on up there. And I also have some happy books because I just came from a political event, but it was at the wastewater treatment plant. Oh, exciting. But it is exciting because we are on the cutting edge in the green energy of we have put in this incredible piece that traps the carbon dioxide and the methane. We're kind of, through there. We have this really great operation that has saved the city 100. We just got a grant for 100 money back, 130,000. And Karen Chase was there talking about how big this is. That our city is on the cutting edge of doing everything that they can for a greener world and to get back money to our constituents. So it was one of those political events, but it was really exciting and it is really nice to know. We get beat up a lot at the city. I hope everybody's taking that survey because we're going to be beat up a whole lot more in the next year if we find public safety funding. But the city does do a lot of really wonderful things. So I'm grateful I've had the opportunity.
So I have $10 also. Wonderful Thanksgiving, and Val and I and our her husband and my husband, we sort of have a rendezvous every Thanksgiving at the hotel we stay at because we have kids in the Portland area, and that we always kind of get together that way. I am also thankful for Mint, and
bottom line here is that while all of this, while all the challenges of where the money is coming from and where the money is going continues, there are those of us that are saying, this is what's happening now, and how can we help now? And so, more is coming about that. We're gonna put together, some points of how everybody can be involved and what are the needs. So there's one to 10 bucks for. And Josh, nice job. Who's next?
I just wanted to say, I love the fact that our apolitical group is very involved in politics and community and all that, because everything really is sort of politics if you think of it in that kind of way, but thank you.
That's Dawn.
On a lighthearted but very serious note, I'm grateful that the deaths. And on the last baby.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Do the cards.
Also, I'd like to thank Josh. That was a great presentation. I'm kind of intrigued by what's going on down in Washington, so it was pretty interesting to hear an inside perspective. And also thanks Valerie for sharing that about the wastewater treatment plant. Not the most exciting topic, but I'm kind of a nerd and I appreciate good infrastructure, so I'd love to hear it. Thank you.
Okay, I got some cards over there. So else would like to share gratitude? Are we doing the cards then? Okay, next, Doug, you've always got them. Thank you, dear.
Mark River, yeah. So I would add to the wastewater treatment plant. At one point, I was doing volunteer work at elementary school right next to the treatment plant, and I was able to take kids there, science class kids there for a field trip. And that was just a tremendous amount of fun to go into the wastewater treatment plant with a bunch of fourth graders and show them that sink. There's Valerie.
Yeah.
And it sort of got squashed because it became much more difficult both with the school and with the wastewater treatment plant for security purposes. And I would say, please try to figure out a way of making that more available. There's some amazing science and infrastructure that goes on there, even though it sinks to high heaven with it. It's really worthwhile to open that up to kids and field trips. Right. But they need to bring that smell with them. That's really what matters. And so along the smell thing, just add a little funny note. So I was doing this with the kids, and so there was a group of 15 or whatever that was in my science group, and there was this one young lady who was just tough, and you could tell she was in charge of people, and she had it going on, and she was just very impressive. And in thinking, knowing about the sink at the water treatment plant, it turns a couple of them green, and some of them have to walk away and can't go in, because it can be pretty bad. And I thought for sure she'd no problem, and that's not the one that's gonna turn over sideways. And she walked in and she just turned green and just collapsed. I'm just like, but no way. Morgan, she's the one that turned green, collapsed, no way. But it was funny.
Okay, we're going to give Anne Bauer the last chance here to defend herself and tell the story about the bastard kids and babysitter. There's 5 of us, age 4, 3, 2, 1, and an infant, and she got 50 cents an hour. And we tied her up one time. Anyway,
I raised it 50 cents an hour. I was babysitting for Anne during the day, and the kids were playing and everything, and they wanted to play tie up the babysitter. So I thought, the oldest one was maybe 7. And I thought, I don't know how they could tie me up tight enough that I couldn't get untied. They did. However, if you remember back in the 50s and 60s, all of our phones were connected to a cord, and their mother called.
and it couldn't reach me. Therefore, they had to untie me so I could talk to them up. So that's on Friday.
Okay, let's draw the card and wrap today up. Let's see, who's on? Oh, they're up here, you just choose one, huh?
Well, you got it.
Well, let's make June do it, so that's different. You gonna do it? Try to say which part and. It's to pick the heart. Oh, right. Good. Okay, thanks, everyone. Back to Jim.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Judy. Well done. Hey, one more little trivia about the water treat or wastewater treatment plant. I imagine it's still true, but the city used to say that the water that leaves the wastewater treatment plant and goes back into the Rogue River is actually cleaner than the water that comes out of the Rogue River that gets purified and turned into our drinking water. So that's pretty amazing. Definitely must know something as well.
Well. And it's on from.
Okay, we have a quotation, thought for the day. This is from Robert F. Kennedy, in April of 1968, and he said, "Let us dedicate ourselves to what the Greeks wrote so many years ago. Detain the savages of man and make gentle the life of the world. Let us dedicate ourselves to that and say a prayer for our country and our people." Thank you.